Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever it may be for you. My name is Alec Talenta. Today I'll be going over my speech over the Tiger King's cult. Now, Joe Exotic from the Netflix docuseries Tiger King. He was originally born Joseph Allen Schrielbogel, and it is this man right here in the background. In the show, he is portrayed as this colorful, out-of-the-box character, but is he really that? Is he really just an eccentric tiger lover? Or is he really just a vile and manipulative cult leader? Now, for those who are wondering, why? Why am I giving you this speech? Well, as I sat and watched the first few episodes, I couldn't help but not only be entertained, but think to myself, why are we fantasizing this lifestyle, these characteristics in people? Some of these people on these shows, such as Doc Antle and Joe Exotic, they're actually really vile individuals in real life, and we really shouldn't be glorifying these kinds of lifestyles to entice people to join them. So, here are the reasons why I feel Joe Exotic and Doc Antle and the cast of Tiger King are all a part of separate cults that are just trying to recruit and indoctrinate people into this tiger-loving society. But first, before we do that, we must define cults. Now, a cult is a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious, and that is defined by the Webster's Dictionary. But this is Dr. Robert J. Lifton, and he is a psychologist, and he wrote a research report over cults called Cult Formation. And he defines them as having three very distinct traits of a destructive cult. And those are 1, a charismatic leader, 2, thought reform, and 3, exploitation of a sexual, emotional, mental, physical nature. Now, speaking to the charismatic leader portion, for a cult to have a charismatic leader, the charismatic leaders tend to have a high demand for attention and adoration. They must always be the center of the spotlight or the center of their universe. And they must also have a very seductive aura or charm to them, so that way they can lure people in to join their societies. Now, as you can see, we can compare Joe Exotic to other famous cult leaders such as Charles Manson and Shoko Asahara, two well-known and notorious cult leaders. So for Joe, he uses his entire show, the docu-series, and the zoo that he owns as like a stage to basically show how grandiose his lifestyle is and make him and his zoo the center of the world at that moment. And to speak to Joe Exotic's seductive, charismatic charm side, Joe even convinced 2 straight men to form a polygamous marriage arrangement with him at the same time. So you can't get much more seductive than that. He must have a really powerful seductive charm in order to convince 2 straight men to marry him without any questions or anything like that to pop up. Now, moving on to thought reform. Thought reform is basically mental manipulation into getting people to either see things in a certain light or to overlook certain wrongdoings. And now, one of the methods of how thought reform is achieved is through traumatic narcissism. Traumatic narcissism is defined by Daniel Shaw, an author and a psychologist who wrote a book titled Traumatic Narcissism. And in it, he defined narcissism as, or traumatic narcissism as, the narcissism that is engendered into a subject to the point where they are so far gone that they do not see the wrongs in the situations. And this can be shown in Tiger King via two different examples. One would be Doc Antle's Tiger Girls. Doc Antle's Tiger Girls, whenever they get hired on, they are pressured into legally changing their names as to wipe the slate clean of their old life and wholly adopt the way of the tiger, as Wisecrack also says. But also, as far as Joe goes, Joe's employee Saf was attacked by a tiger on camera and ended up losing her arm. Now, you can see thought reform placed on her because she had two options. She can either take 2 years off and have her arm be repaired and be able to be used again, or can keep it. Or she can have it amputated and return to work a week later. And she opted for the latter. So she ended up having her arm amputated, and by that Friday she was back at work for Joe again because she couldn't lose steam in this tiger-loving, tiger-saving cult religion that he follows. Now moving on to exploitation. Most cult leaders have a tendency to have very selective targets and demographics of people in mind when they look for people to indoctrinate into their cult. And these victims are often overworked to the point of exhaustion. And when they are overworked to that point of exhaustion, their minds don't have the ability to fight back towards it anymore. They don't have the ability to reason with it. So it leaves them open and available to be manipulated, to be sexually abused or exploited, and they just don't have the mental capacity or the will to fight it anymore, so they just accept it. An example of this would be Doc Antle and his Tiger Girls again. Doc Antle only targets women who are sexually inexperienced and basically brings them into his own little Tiger Girl harem that he has. And he even stated that he only targets girls who are, either virgins or close to virgins, as former Tiger Girls have come out against him and said what he looks for. And it's just sickening. Now, wrapping up, in conclusion, Joe Exotic and his merry band of misfits show themselves to be closer to cultists than tiger-loving enthusiasts. So why glorify their escapades and influence the general public into thinking that this lifestyle is acceptable in any way? It is for this reason that I believe that we should act and not watch these shows and glorify these lifestyles, lest we all fall into the cultist mentality. Thank you.